Okay, welcome to our live with Impact 100 and May We Help. I'm Sarah Grace, president of Impact 100, and it is my job today to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. So our mission here at Impact 100 is to empower women to dramatically improve lives by collectively funding significant grants that make a lasting impact on our community. And the way that works is that women join at either a $500 or $1,000 level. We then pool those monies together into grants of at least $100,000. And then we ask local nonprofits to submit grant applications in one of our 5 focus areas, which are family, health and wellness, education, culture, and environment, recreation, and preservation. And then our members come together to review the grant applications, perform financial analysis, site visits, and then ultimately select our grant finalists. And in September, at our annual word celebration, we will reveal the decision of the members and give out our grants, which is pretty exciting. And then we partner with our grant recipients between 1 and 3 years, which is a fairly long-term grant relationship. Since our inception in 2001, we've awarded over $5 million to local nonprofits for a total of 47 transformational projects of at least $100,000. And I like to always share what I think is special about Impact 100. So for me, the first thing is that 100% of our membership dollars go to our grant pool. So all 1,000 or 500 of the membership dollars go right into the grant pool, which is pretty impressive. Our members can be as involved or uninvolved as they choose to be. So you can write your check and then have faith that your fellow members are going to be amazing stewards of your money, or you could be president. It's the opportunities are that vast. And lastly, we are a 100% working board. We have an amazing outsourced administrative person, Jen. We couldn't live without her. But other than her, it's 24 women and our committees making this thing happen, which is so impressive. And lastly, before I turn it over to Claire O'Brien, I want to thank our sponsors. So as you can imagine, if 100% of our member dollars go to the grant pool, that means we got a big old zero in operating funds every year. So without these sponsors, we could not do this work. We couldn't host events. We couldn't have our Zoom account. We couldn't have our awesome outsourced admin. So we like to take this opportunity to just thank them immensely for their contribution to our work. And so with that, my spiel is over, and I'm going to turn it over to Claire O'Brien to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Sarah Grace. Stacy asked me to introduce May We Help, and so I thought I would share my personal story around May We Help. So I first encountered May We Help in 2015, which was my first year as an Impact 100 member, and I was really just learning the process. But as I was reading through the LOIs and the grant proposals, I felt this immediate connection with May We Help's mission. And that might be a little bit because of my background, which is both technical and business. And so one of the things that I really liked about May We Help was that all of these talented engineers and designers built customized assistive devices for people with disabilities, which enabled them to gain independence and pursue their passions. And I know that a lot of the other community members felt very strongly about this as well. It also gave these skilled volunteers an avenue to volunteer their talents. And some of these are maybe non-traditional volunteers, men that are retired, that have specialized skills that are really great and apply to these situations. So I stayed in touch with the executive director, and I eventually joined the board. And it's just been great working with May We Help. And 2 years ago, we were really fortunate and very excited to bring on Rob Siederman as our executive director. And every time I work with Rob, I am just inspired by his passion, his creativity, and his ability to connect with just about anyone, whether that's one of our clients, our volunteers, our partner agencies, or our sponsors. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rob.
Well, thanks, Claire. May We Help's mission resonated with me in a way that I could never describe either. It had to do with my family's own personal experience, and ever since I learned about May We Help, it's just been foremost on my mind. So it was a huge honor to be able to take over as executive director and see through that mission. And with that in mind, let me just give you a little bit of context about May We Help. First of all, I just want to thank you guys very much for having me. I love doing this because it's a chance for me to talk about my two favorite organizations in the world, which are May We Help and Impact 100, and I really mean that. I've become very close with the folks at Impact 100, and we work really closely together, and I consider them my friends, and they continue to help May We Help. As Sarah Grace said, you know, years later, still a partner in my mind. But some context around May We Help, as Claire said, we focus on people with disabilities. And we are a team of volunteers, 75 volunteers who represent almost every imaginable skill set. They are inventors and industrial designers and engineers and welders and woodworkers and seamstresses and doctors and physical and occupational therapists. And all those skill sets come together when somebody with a disability needs a device made, because that device is going to help them get on with their life, but that device is not available commercially. So everything that our volunteers do is one of a kind, custom, and never been done before. And the different skill sets come together depending on the need of the individual. One of the things I love most about May We Help is, as I said, it's 75 volunteers, but we're only 5 staff, and I'm the only full-timer. So whereas at most nonprofits, you've got a staff that sees through the mission of that organization, at May We Help, it's the volunteers that see through the mission of the organization, and it's the staff that assists them and ensures that they have everything that they need to do just that. The focus is on 2 areas, and I'm just going to give you an idea of what those 2 areas are with a couple illustrations. But the first area is independence. So this little girl, for example, there's no wheelchair out there that's going to accommodate her needs. So we built this wheelchair from scratch, and it allowed her to be, fully independent again. You can see that the joystick that controls her power chair isn't located in the typical position. It's located up by her shoulder because that's what she uses to control it. And we do stuff like that all the time. But you can see real quickly with this illustration that without May We Help, this person's going to be hard pressed to have the independence that she requires. The second area of focus for us is helping people pursue their passions. And this young woman's name is Inga, and she's one of my favorite people to talk about. You can see that she plays the cello, and she plays it with her feet. And the problem that she was facing was that she was so good at the time that she made this request, which was about 5 years ago. She was the number 11 junior ranked cellist in Pennsylvania. So she's not just playing row, your boat at home. She's with a group, and she was having a hard time keeping up with her group because she couldn't hold the bow in between the toes of her feet with the precision that she needed. So we created that device for her. We also created the stand that the cello sits on because that was really important too. It had to be at just the right angle for her needs, but it also had to be at the right angle so that musically the sound reverberated the way it was supposed to. But that's a picture of Inga, and that's a picture of her playing with her group. That was about 5 years ago. So that's just some context around what May We Help does, but we do about 300 of these projects every year. And we work really closely with Children's Hospital, for example. About 20% of our projects are direct referrals from them. But it wasn't always like this. Beginning in 2006 through 2015, we were nothing more than a handful of disparate volunteers spread out through greater Cincinnati, just pursuing, their skills. They had fun using their skills to help people that had needs. But requests were coming in through word of mouth only. The volunteers were working in their garages or their own basements, or they were borrowing tools and sharing equipment. And then in 2015, May We Help was awarded the Impact 100 grant, and absolutely everything changed. What we did with that money is we built a workshop that has all the capabilities that our volunteers could ever imagine. So it has all the woodworking capabilities they might need, all the metalworking capabilities they might need, all the plastic working capabilities. And what it did is it transformed May We Help from a group of disparate volunteers spread out through greater Cincinnati and it transformed us into a makerspace with a purpose. We went from doing about 30 projects a year to, like I said, about 300 every year. It also means now that we can meet the needs of not just individuals, but organizations that serve people with disabilities. In addition to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, we've done about 50 projects for St. Joseph Home. If you're not familiar with St. Joseph Home, they have 48 residents whose needs are so complex that there's 250 caregivers there. And when we walk into St. Joseph Home, we get the royal treatment. They just it's nothing short of laying out the red carpet for us, because they're so grateful for the devices that we've made for them that not just help their residents, but also help their caregivers and make their lives easier too. We've done about 20 projects for Stepping Stones now as well, the Joe Knoxville Miracle League. So we were really able to expand with our workshop to better meet the needs of the community. And in my mind, that's why May We Help is such a good example of what Impact 100 does. It transforms organizations for the good of the community. And really, from my perspective, most profits, like May We Help, so many of the nonprofits in Cincinnati are like May We Help. We're not huge, but we're big enough that we're making an impact on the community that without us, the community would be suffering. But we rely on these smaller, quote, family foundations. And I guess the best way to describe them would be, it's a foundation that was created with the assets of a particular family, and they're usually managed by a bank like PNC or Fifth Third or so forth, or the Greater Cincinnati Foundation is another example of the type of foundations that are managed, that are these family foundations. And they're great. We rely on them, and I'm so grateful to them. But their grant awards are smallish, ranging anywhere from like $2,500 to a big one would be like $25,000. And what happens is those grants, they're so small that they don't really transform programming. They maintain programming, which is critical to us and critical to the community. But they don't inspire and they don't push you to think bigger. So what about those people in the community whose needs are not being met? What about those people in the community whose needs are not being met satisfactorily? It takes big, bold, innovative thinking to help them. Clearly, or otherwise they would have been helped by now. And so those small grant awards don't force you to think in terms of how can I think bigger and out of the box so that I can help them. But when Impact 100 comes along, now you're talking about a $105,000 grant. And so that's big money for a nonprofit like May We Help. And so what it does is it creates a ton of competition within the nonprofit world, because they all want that $105,000 grant. So what that competition does is it forces us to think bigger and more innovatively and more outside the box so that we can meet the needs of people that weren't being met before. We're always thinking benevolent, beautiful, wonderful thoughts, but they're not game-changing thoughts. And Impact 100 forces us to think in terms of game-changing. It's also the competitiveness that it instills also forces you not just to think big and creatively, but to think smart, because Impact 100's vetting process is rigorous. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all. The fact that it's so rigorous forces a solution to be perfect, and know that it's been so vetted that when it gets out there in the community that it's going to work. And it's also, I want to add too, that one of the other things that's so great about Impact 100 and really distinguishes it from other funding organizations is the family foundations. I rarely meet those trustees. I sort of envision them and picture them in a dark boardroom in some bank somewhere making decisions, but I never see those folks. I'm grateful for them, but I never see them, and they're not really a quote partner. I always feel like that their vetting process is more, let's try to trip up that organization and see where their weaknesses are, which is fine. It keeps us sharp, and it's one way to vet. But I never felt that way with Impact 100. I always felt like they were so supportive, and they wanted this project to succeed because they care about the community. If the project succeeds, the community benefits. So with all that in mind, let's go back to some of the projects that Impact 100's grant has allowed us to pursue. My favorite projects are really the most recent ones that we've done, because all of the projects that we do are just so meaningful to me. But this little guy here, he has always relied on a feed tube 24/7. But when he became a toddler, he was tripping on the feed tube. And so the family went to the therapist and they got him this functional backpack that's made just for that purpose. And it holds all of his gear and everything. But this little guy, he was so frail and he had so many needs beyond just what the feed tube was, that when he put the backpack on, he actually fell over. It was too bulky and big and heavy for him. And the family was really frustrated because he couldn't get on with his life and they couldn't get on with their life as a family. And so they went to May We Help, and our seamstress came up with a solution. They created a vest that contours to his body, so it's lightweight and it's not big and bulky, and it doesn't keep him off balance, and it holds all the gear. And now they're back to being a normal family again. This little guy's family, they love the beach. It's a big part of their life. They love going to the beach. But what they were doing is pulling this little guy in a snow sled, if you can imagine that, with rope. They had one snow sled that they pulled him in, and a second snow sled that was pulled alongside him that held all the equipment that was needed to keep him alive. He always has to be laying down for his condition. And so they came to us and said, what can you do to help? And so we created this beach buggy that assembles and disassembles in just a few minutes and is super lightweight, so they can go to the beach, set this thing up, put their child on it, has all the gear with them, and it's just changed their life. This is a pool float that we created. We actually put this on Facebook and had 29 more requests for it overnight, because it's such a game changer for people who love the water. The water is almost always the best place for many of our clients, because it's so therapeutic and it's so fun. But most of our folks, they're used to pool floats where they have to hold on with their hands or something like that, and so their hands aren't free, and they don't get all the therapeutic benefits, and they don't get all the fun benefits. And so this pool float, while you can't see it, has a support mechanism underneath that supports her underneath, so her hands and her feet are free. And the parents can rest easy because she has a lot more independence in the pool. This one kind of speaks for itself, but this person had severe arthritis and they couldn't push down on the pedal of the piano, and so they couldn't pursue their passion anymore of playing the piano. And this little device helps them, it makes the pedal much easier to push down. Here's Inga again. So this is Inga, who we spoke to earlier about, she was the cellist. And 5 years after our first project with her, she came back to May We Help. And she said, well, now she's in college. She's just an amazing individual. She's not in college in her backyard in Pennsylvania. She's actually in New York City, so her parents have got to be a nervous wreck. But Inga came to us and said, I can't stand asking my roommates to help me get dressed and undressed in the morning. And so we created this little dressing hook for her that she uses to help her get dressed and undressed, and she can do it 100% independently. In fact, she traveled through Europe with this device. And anyway, we showed it to Children's Hospital, and they asked for 8 of them, one for each of their locations. So their occupational and physical therapists are using it too. We're doing a lot of adaptive sports innovation these days, and this one was, this is for the new iFly that opened up in Westchester. And this little guy is actually in a wheelchair, but even if you can't, you might not be able to stand, you might not even be able to walk, but you can always fly. What this little guy can't do, though, is hold the position that he needs to be in there. So we created this harness that he's wearing, and it allows him to get into the position needed to fly and to hold that position. Children's Hospital came to us, their therapist came to us one day and said, hey, if we had a little pediatric cane that worked just like this one you see here, we think that this little guy would accelerate his learning to walk independently. But nothing like this existed in the marketplace, so we built it. And sure enough, the therapist was right. 3 weeks later, this little guy was walking completely independently. And once again, they asked for one of these at each of their locations. Here's a great example of how May We Help helps caregivers. So this petite mom has to caregive her really large adult son. And what that means is she has to change him. And so when they're out and about, there's no changing room that is going to accommodate them. Even if she could lift him up onto one of those changing tables, it's still too small, and she can't lift him anyway. So they didn't go anywhere because if they're out and about and she needed to change him and change his G-tube and all that kind of stuff, what was she supposed to do? And so we created this wheelchair extension. So now all they need to do is go into a private room. She can slide them out, do what they need to do, put the wheelchair extension back on, and then now they're out and about and enjoying the world again. This is an example of a project we did for St. Joseph Home, which is that place we talked about earlier where they have 48 residents. And those people love, just like us, the simple pleasures of life. They love rocking in a rocking chair. But to get them into a rocking chair was not fun. They're in bed or in a wheelchair, and so you had to pick them up and get them into the rocking chair, and that was really sort of an undignified process. And so we created this, May We Help volunteers created this base, and residents can wheel their wheelchair onto the base whenever they want, and with the push of a button, they can rock their wheelchair. So all the residents in St. Joseph Home are now rocking 24/7. This is another chair that we've made. This one's called a sensory chair, and it's for kids with autism, or people with autism, actually. And it started out just like any other May We Help project. But this one, we've now placed over 300 of these sensory chairs, not just in homes for kids with autism, but in hospitals and schools, and even trauma-informed care units. But there's one school, Linden Grove, that has one chair in each of their 12 classrooms. Because if little Johnny's about to have a meltdown, and he has autism, the teacher can recognize that, and she just says, "Hey, Johnny, you want to go hang out in the sensory chair?" Which he does for like 10 minutes, comes back and rejoins the class. He's avoided the meltdown, and the classroom has avoided the disruption. So it's really become a valuable tool for them. We just placed one in the Dayton Children's Hospital pre-surgery room because it's performing so well. So when we create the first step to creating these projects is our volunteers do what we call a discovery visit. They visit the client, typically in his or her home, but basically the environment in which the client is trying to thrive. And they get to know the client, and they get to know his or her needs. Well, when we do those discovery visits, 9 times out of 10, there's a bunch of adaptive equipment sitting in their basement or garage just collecting dust. Because either the client's evolved out of it or they've grown out of that piece of adaptive equipment, but the equipment is so expensive that they don't throw it away. But throughout the course of any given day, we meet just as many families who are desperate for that very equipment. And so while it seemed like a no-brainer to us, we don't know anybody else that's ever done it. We created an adaptive equipment swap. And so right now, we're getting ready for our August swap. There's about 200 pieces of adaptive equipment in May We Help. And we will invite the public, I think it's on August 23rd, to come take home any piece of equipment that they could imagine needing. And it's always free of charge. And in 2019, we started this, and in that 1 year alone, we matched over 250 people with over $1 million worth of equipment. And the Impact 100 Workshop has become so critical to the success of the swap, and here's why. When you come in and you get a piece of adaptive equipment from an individual or a family for whom that piece of equipment was originally customized, it's not going to be perfectly suited for your needs. And so when those people come to May We Help for their new piece of equipment, we're able to give it to them, number one, and number two, they can go into the workshop with one of our volunteers on the spot and have that piece of equipment customized to perfectly suit their needs. So when they go home, it is ready and perfect for them. I'm just going to flip through some of these that speak for themselves. This is a really cool one. We've done a bunch of these. This is a fishing magician that helps people cast and reel. We placed several of these throughout the community. This one's pretty fun. This is the Halloween Festival. It's our favorite holiday at May We Help because if you're in a power chair, you can be the envy of every kid on the block because our volunteers, in conjunction with UC students who are in their theater arts program, we make these elaborate, really almost life-size costumes that actually are mounted to the power chairs. We have a Halloween festival at May We Help where they debut these costumes and then they take them home and they do Halloween with them. So that's kind of a good slide to finish on. It's really, more than anything, when you or somebody in your family is diagnosed with some new condition, all of a sudden you're a deer in the headlights, you don't know where you can turn, and somebody mentions, may we help to these individuals, to these families, and suddenly there's hope. And that's a huge part of what we do. And Impact 100 was a huge part in allowing us to do it. So I can stick around and answer any questions that folks might have. But once again, I really appreciate you letting me do this, because I just love talking about May We Help, and I love talking about Impact 100.
That was awesome, Rob. I've obviously heard you a few times, and I love to hear some news stories. So that was awesome. And I got to hear quickly what you guys have been up to, but why don't you share with the group what you guys have been up to the last 3 months?
Yeah, absolutely. So then, then COVID hit, and we're always looking out at the community and saying, okay, what are the community needs, number one, and then number two, where do those needs intersect with our organizational capabilities? And when they do, we implement a program. That's how the adaptive equipment swap came to be. We started a program called Adaptive Sports Innovation for that same reason. And then when COVID hit, we asked ourselves the same question: what's going on in the community, and where do our skill sets help? And so we arrived at making face shields. This was a way that our skill sets could be put to use. We could still feel valuable to the community. It was something that we could do outside. It was something that people could do in their homes. So it kept our volunteers safe. And we so far, we're still going, but we have so far built and distributed over 2,000 face shields. The first 1,000 went to healthcare workers, and the most recent set of 1,000 went to daycare centers and schools, in addition to dentists and doctors too. So we helped immediately with the healthcare worker needs, and then we helped people reopen. So that's, and once again, the workshop was critical. So that's what we've been up to lately. But the good news is that we're getting back to business as normal. We just held our first physical and in-person volunteer meeting. Almost every volunteer showed up, and all the projects got reassigned. So we're starting to feel like we're getting back to normal, which is great.
A lot of these people have mobility issues, and then with COVID happening, how are you guys going into their homes still to
Oh yeah, we've had to get creative because it's a really good question. Most of the clients that we serve are immunocompromised, and then many of our volunteers are retired, so they're in that upper age bracket. And so both the person providing the help and the person on the receiving end of the help are a little bit paranoid right now. And so we've had to get really creative. We're using Zoom and Skype to communicate with them, and we're even picking up the computers and manipulating it around the wheelchair in order to see where the modifications are needed. We're dropping equipment off and having it dropped off outside and then picking it up so that there is limited interaction. The adaptive equipment swap usually is, we just open the doors and people flood into May We Help. And I mean that quite literally. The last time we opened the doors for an adaptive equipment swap, there were 25 people in line waiting to get in. But now we're doing it by appointment. So we're only letting a couple, families in at a time to keep the numbers under 10 always. And so, yeah, we've had to get really creative, but we've found ways to make it work.
Are you finding that your families are asking for face shields or other protective mechanisms? Or
yeah, in fact, the newest need, and this one's really challenging, but we're really excited about it. Many of the clients we serve can't wear face shields or face masks. If you have autism, for example, it just might be uncomfortable, and you're just resistant to it. And so they fight putting the face shield on. And so we have been tasked with creating a face shield or a face mask that people with those types of issues and challenges, that we can come up with something that they'll actually want to wear. It's a tough challenge, but I think it's a really important one, and it could be a game changer, not just in our community, but nationwide, really.
That's awesome. Randy put in the chat, are any of the inventions patented?
So we're working on that. So the sensory chair, that's the chair that was developed for kids with autism, and the one that we've placed in over 300 different places, including homes and hospitals and schools. So that has led to a really interesting place for May We Help. In fact, when I interviewed for May We Help 2 years ago, when it was my turn to ask questions of the board of directors, the only question I had is, what's the pain point that May We Help has? What's the one thing that comes up at every board meeting and everybody groans? And it was commercialization of our devices, because, you know, most of them are individualized, but every once in a while we come up with one like the sensory chair that lends itself to multiple users. And the sensory chair was just such a great example of that. And so we finally put that UGG conversation to rest and said, and we decided, yes, let's go ahead and commercialize that for two reasons. One, we want to increase our impact. We always do. So if we can commercialize this, there are 2.1 million kids living with autism in America. Every single one of them would benefit from the sensory chair, as would kids with ADHD and other issues too. And so, our volunteers, they can't make 2 million sensory chairs. They can't even make 2,000, nor do they want to. It's not their thing. And so we're going the route of commercialization with the sensory chair. One, to increase our impact, but also two, to help create a new revenue stream for us that will help fund May We Help's mission. So it's an exciting time.
I'm going to Sarah Grace has a question, but I'm going to go off what you just said. I wasn't on the FAC, so I don't remember exactly how your funding works. I know obviously you get money from private donors, and then like some of your projects, people then are inspired to donate, but are you allowed to like bill insurance or?
We don't. Everything that we do at no charge, and we rely on free sources of funding. We don't, there's no insurance or anything like that. We rely on the generosity of foundations and individual donors, and we hold fundraising events.
Awesome. Okay, so Sarah Grace asked, how many volunteer hours do you have annually from your team?
I don't have a firm number for you.
How about very round? You said how many volunteers do you have?
Oh God, I'm gonna say 10,000 hours. I mean, we have 75 volunteers. Every project is one of a kind. They don't have any drawings to go off of. They create it from scratch. There are multiple iterations of those projects to get them right. I can't even tell you how many hours. We just completed one project for Make-A-Wish. So it was a little girl who was supposed to go to Disney World for her Make-A-Wish dream, and she couldn't because of COVID. So Make-A-Wish came to us and said, you know, if we can't get this little girl to a castle, can we build a castle just for her? And so we built Callie's Castle, and a team of volunteers put 300 hours into just that one project.
Wow. So then are you getting materials and like computer programming and all that stuff donated for your volunteers?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thanks. So that's really, you know, you look at any sort of project, usually time and materials, right? We can all sort of relate to that. Well, in terms of time, our volunteers donate all their time, so there's really no expenses there. It really has to do with the supplies that we need. And so yes, that's all of our revenue goes towards project supplies and just overhead for the business.
And Teresa asked, are most of your clients local, or do you guys go nationally?
Well, most of our clients are local. That said, we have created, built, and delivered devices to over 36 states now, and a few internationally too.
Awesome.
And we have a chapter in Columbus, and then a loosely knit chapter that is starting to come to fruition in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
For your own information, everyone, Claire just posted that value of volunteer hours just went up, and she put a link in the chat. And then Sarah Grace, do you collaborate with any of the design and engineering schools in the area?
Yeah, the collaboration that I'm most excited about right now is that with the UC Master of Occupational Therapy program. So it started last summer, and UC's Master of Occupational Therapy program made it mandatory. It was a requirement that you actually spend the summer with being mentored by May We Help volunteers. It was so important to them because they didn't have opportunities for their students to get hands-on, real live training. So when they were going out, after they graduated with their degrees, they were going out with no experience, no hands-on experience. And so now it's actually, you can't graduate the UC's Master of Occupational Therapy program without spending the summer being mentored by a May We Help volunteer. And it's so cool. They get a real May We Help project request, and they fulfill it working alongside a May We Help volunteer. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know a lot of the photos are of kids, but you work with anyone.
Yeah, the kid photos, they tend to make people more weepy, and so that's always our goal. But yeah, we work with, we fulfill requests from adults too, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentage is. I'm going to say it's probably 80-20.
Yeah. I know we always talk about, when you speak, I feel like everyone's like, oh, well, if I have an in for, any kind of equipment that's not being used, they know to donate it. Is there anything else that, if anyone was inspired to give back now, what would you ask for?
I would ask them to attend our upcoming virtual event towards the end of August. It's going to be fun. We've got an amazing keynote speaker. His story is so cool, and we love it because it's so inspirational, but it also really parallels what May We Help does. So our keynote is a gentleman named Mike Schultz. And I used to live in Colorado, and I first watched Mike Schultz at the X Games, the Winter X Games in Aspen. And he was this crazy guy that would get in a snowmobile and do freestyle competitions. And he'd go off these giant jumps and do, flips and jumps and loops on a snowmobile. Well, anyway, of course, he crashed at some point, and he lost his leg. And he waited a couple years to get his prosthetic. And when it finally came, he was just so excited. I mean, it was going to be a game changer for him. He just waited and waited and waited with anticipation. Then he got it, and for a few hours, he was super excited. And then he quickly became disappointed again, and because he realized that prosthetic was not going to be suitable for him to be able to pursue his dreams with. It just couldn't keep up with him, in other words. And unlike most of our clients, though, he had the wherewithal and the know-how to get into his own workshop, and he created and built and he fabricated his own prosthetic. And it's the one he uses to this day. And not only did it allow him to reclaim his role as a champion freestyle snowmobiler, it actually inspired him to take up snowboarding. And he became so good at it so quickly that he was a 2000, I can't remember, 16 or 17 Paralympic gold medalist in snowboarding. And in 2018, he was awarded the ESPY for Male Disabled Athlete of the Year. So that year, Tom Brady won Male Athlete of the Year, and Mike Schultz won Male Disabled Athlete of the Year. But it just goes to show that in his case, he was his own team of experts. But with your own team of experts, you can customize a piece of equipment that allows you to pursue your dreams. Whereas our clients don't have that wherewithal, they rely on us to be their team of experts, but we help them pursue their dreams. And that's the message that Mike is going to share with everybody.
Awesome. Sarah Grace just posted the link to that event if you guys want to attend.
Fabulous. Thanks, Sarah Grace.
And then Mary Beth had another question. Do you upgrade existing equipment for a child by building it for their current age and size?
I'm sorry, do we do what?
do you like upgrade someone's
Oh,
existing equipment for their, if they grow or?
yeah. I mean, there's some families for whom we've done 7 different pieces of equipment. There are some families for whom we've done 7 iterations of the equipment. Sometimes sometimes they just outgrow it and we need to expand it. But other times their needs evolve, and so we have to continually modify the equipment. I'll give you a perfect example. There's one little girl that we've done projects for over the course of the last 7 years. And I think when she turned 15, she had to have her spine fused, and then she had to have her spine fused to her hips. And the mom came to us and said, she was just apologetic, which you can imagine that. She goes, I'm just so sorry. I mean, you guys have built all these different devices for us. Now none of them work because physically she's a different person. And we went in and modified them all. And she said, thank goodness for May We Help. We don't know what we would do without you. And I can't tell you how many times, all of us can know this, that how many times in any given day, somebody has said, I don't know what I'd do without you. And it's a beautiful thing to say, but 9 times out of 10, they don't really mean it. But in this mom's case, boy, did she mean it. I mean, I don't know what she would do without May We Help either, quite honestly.
Yeah, and I've seen a few of them, like you can tell that the engineer had that forethought to see like this person's going to grow, so they'll leave an extra, whatever it is, height or length or whatever.
Yeah, we have a group of 12 May We Help volunteers who have been around for at least 10 years. We call them our senior volunteer group. And many of the projects get run by them now so that they can offer their experience and insights to the newer volunteers so that their learnings get carry on so that people aren't always reinventing. And so those are some of the things that a senior volunteer might share with a newer May We Help volunteer and say, look, if you're working with this kid, leave some room for them to grow or stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely enjoyed the hour with Rob. Thank you so much. As always, you do a fabulous job.
Thanks.
Representing Impact 100 and Maybe Help. You're one of our favorites. If anyone else has any questions, I'm happy to share Rob's contact info. And of course, you can go to the website for any other information about the event or getting involved.
We have a brand new website.
Say again.
We have a brand new website.
And a brand new website.
Thanks to your website designer, Julie. We share the same website design.
Oh, really? And for those of you that are not current Impact 100 members, I just want to let you know that if you want to join Impact 100 so that you can be a part of grants that go to organizations like May We Help, you can do that anytime between now and December 31st. You can be a full member or a half member, and that just equates to a half vote or a full vote. And you can do that by check, credit card, you can pay monthly, however you would like to. Just have to be in by December 31st. And if you want to learn more about Impact, or those that are current members and just want to learn more about what we're up to, we have our Step Up series. I think we just have 2 left, which have been very popular. And of course, we still have a few more live events. We have our annual award celebration, not that far away, which is crazy. But we also have our DEI equity cohorts up and going, and we have a special, for members, we have a special Facebook page that you can be involved in the conversation at any point of the year. So lots of ways to stay in touch with Impact 100. And I think that's it for us, unless anyone has any questions. Thank you all for taking the time to hear from Rob. We do appreciate it. Oh, we got some messages I'm missing, sorry. Rob, I don't know if you're looking at the chat, but.
I can see, I saw Caroline weigh in. Hi, Caroline. And I saw Claire weigh in. Hi, Claire.
So yeah, thank you, of course. Rob, if you want to come back, let us know.
Oh, just call me anytime. I'll be around in an instant.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.